Beruchim Abayim Rabotai, welcome to another edition of our Thursday night class. Tonight's class is being studied Le'ilun Nishmat Amar Bat Mazal, Mrs. Muriel Safti, Aleh Shalom, donated by her children. Ruach Hashem Tanihena, Began Eden, Amen. B'Simanat Tava, we are beginning a new Sefer, Sefer Vayikra, Parashat Vayikra, or as it is known as the Sefer of the Korbanot. In the beginning of a Parashat, the Pasuk reads, Vayikra el Moshe, Vaydaber elav me'ohel mo'ed lemor. God calls Moshe, and he tells him, Daber el bnei Yisrael va'amarta alehem. Speak to the Jewish people and tell them, Adam ki yakriv mikem korban laHashem. A man is going to bring a korban, a sacrifice to God. Min ha-behema, min ha-bakar, min ha-son, takribu et korbanchem. So they can bring it from the animals, from the cattle, from the sheep. Takribu et korbanchem. They should bring their sacrifice. I saw a beautiful derasha from the Baal Teferet Shlomo. He talks about the power of speech. Something that we might take for granted. What does it mean, this koach, this power that God invested in human beings, that we have a power to create a reality or change a reality verbally. A classic example is a hatan stands under the chuppah next to his bride-to-be. At that point, before anything happens, the relationship is platonic. They're just friends. He's forbidden to even put a finger on her. And there's no halachic connection between them at all. At that point, if the hatan or the kala wants to change their mind, the only one that will be upset might be the caterer. But everybody else, it's fine. But 9 words later, it's only 9 words, all of a sudden she's considered a married woman. Now already it's eshet ish. Now already it's possible if there's averot committed, she'll be hayabita. Now already, if he wants to back out, he needs a get. She would be forbidden to marry a Kohen, but and what changed from a nothing to a whole Masechet Kedushin, Masechet Ketubot, and Masechet Gittin? 3 Masechtot. And possibly Masechet Yevamot as well. All because of what? 9 words. And the guy that says the 9 words doesn't have to be a big Mikubal either. He doesn't have to have Kavanot of the Rashash. As a matter of fact, most of the people that are getting married don't even know the 9 words. They need to be prompted by the rabbi. Say after me, hare, hare. So the guy that's getting married is a parakeet. He's a monkey. He doesn't know what he's even saying, but because he says the magic 9 words, already it creates a reality and a halachic situation that has many, many halachot. I find that amazing. Power of speech. In Arabic we have a saying, haki balash, words are cheap. But by us in the Torah, words are not cheap at all. Similarly, a person walks into his flock and he sees an animal. The animal has a status of hulin. Hulin is unsacred. Unsacred means he can slaughter it, he can make a barbecue, he can go work the animal and plow it. He can do whatever he wants. He can slaughter the animal, take its hide, make a baseball glove out of it. There's nothing that he can't do with the animal. And all of a sudden the fellow comes along and says 3 words. Hare zu olah. Behold, this is an olah. It is consecrated for a korban olah. Boom. Now the animal is considered kodesh. Now already, if he slaughters it outside of the Azara, outside of the Holy Temple courtyard, there's strict punishments against it. If he uses it for personal usage, again, the Torah penalizes him and he has to bring a sacrifice to atone for it. That's considered me'ilah. Now there's laws of Korban. If it becomes Tameh, the Kohen has to bring it Betahara. All because of what? 3 words. Hare zu olah. 3 words earlier, it was a regular animal, Hulin. 3 words later, it is already Ekdesh. Says the Teferet Shlomo, we can learn a lot from the animal. We can learn the power of speech. If 3 words is able to create such a situation in an animal, could you imagine what the words of the Divrei Torah create? Could you imagine when we speak in prayer? Rav Chaim Volozhin talks in the Sefer Nefesh HaChaim that when a person learns Torah, he's building olamot. You might not be able to see these worlds, but in the upper worlds there's tremendous construction. Al tekre banayich ela bonayich. When we learn Torah, we're actually involved in construction. We're building worlds, we're building olamot. And in Tefillah as well. Tefillah creates great, great things in the Shamayim. And that's what we can learn from the Korban. The power of speech. And that's what he says. He reads the Pasuk like this. Adam ki yakriv mikem korban la Hashem. If a person wants to get close to Kadosh Baruch Hu, ki yakriv. He's interested in getting close. He wants to come near to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Adam ki yakriv mikem korban la Hashem. He wants to have close proximity to Kadosh Baruch Hu. You know what? You know what the advice is? Mina behema. Learn from the behema. That just like the behema is consecrated with words, verbally, so too the way we get close to Kadosh Baruch Hu is via the Lashon. Talmud Torah v'tefillah. The power of speech. But tonight I actually... Well, if we say that already, let me say one more postscript to that Hadush. There's a saying by Hazal, Rish Lakish says in Pasuk, Zot HaTorah la'olah, la'mincha, ve'la'chatat, ve'la'asham. When the Torah is giving us all the laws of the sacrifices, it says, this is the Torah, the laws of the olah, of the mincha, of the hatat, of the asham. It's giving us all the laws. Says Rish Lakish, Zot Torah. If a person learns Torah, la olah. You don't need an olah. You don't need a korban. La minha, la hatat, la asham. You only need korbanot if you don't learn. But Zot Torah, a person's involved in learning, la olah, you don't need it. So explanation based on what I just said could be as follows. The whole purpose of the Korban, what I just said, is what? To teach you the power of speech. And that becomes an impetus to get you to study Torah. You look at what 3 words is able to do a Korban and say, you know what? Imagine if I study Torah, what it does. The power that it has, the energy that it emits. So the Gemara is saying, Zot Torah, if a person's learning already, La olah, la asham, la chat, you don't need the lesson. Already the lesson is gotten. Only those that don't learn need to learn from the Korban. But if you're learning already, that means you know the power of speech. But that's not really what I came to tell you tonight. I came to speak to you about another interpretation, the derash on this first pasuk. All of us know, if you look at the Vayikra, the Aleph of Vayikra is written small. They call that Aleph Ze'ira. It's a small Aleph, not only in the Humashim, even in the Sefer Torah. The Aleph is written in miniature. And the Baal HaTurim points it out and he says, Aleph de Vayikra Ze'ira, Moshe haya gadol ve'anav. Moshe Rabbeinu, as great as he was, that's how humble he was. Lo ratzah lichtov ela Vayikar. By Bil'am, the prophet of the Goyim, God refers to him when God talks to him in the word Vayikar. Vayikar means it's a temporary conversation. It's a conversation not close or intimate. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want to boast and write Vayikra. Vayikra is Lashon Hibah. Vayikra is a language that shows closeness between God and Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu is writing it. Doesn't want to say that he has such a connection, he has such an in. So he wrote Vayikar. Not better than Bil'am. He was humble. כאילו לא נראה לו השם אלא במקרה. He was playing his relationship down as if, God doesn't always talk to me all the time. It was a fluke. It just happened. Vayikra. אמר לו הקדוש ברוך הוא, לכתוב גם האלף. God says, Moshe Rabbeinu, you write the aleph. It's my Torah, it's not your Torah. ושוב, אמר לו משה מחמת רוב ענווה שלא יכתבנה אלא קטנה. So Moshe Rabbeinu made a deal with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So I'll write it, but I'm going to make it small. I don't want to write it so big. So when the reader gets it, it looks like Vayikra. Right? It looks good. There's aleph hanging on the top over there. Okay, that was the deal they made. And we learned from over here the humility of Moshe Rabbeinu. So somebody once asked, why does the Torah go out of its way in the beginning of Parashat Korbanot to teach me the humility of Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu was introduced to us already in the beginning of Parashat Shemot. So this is one book later, and now all of a sudden the Torah decides to highlight the Hanava of Moshe Rabbeinu. Vayikra, small aleph. He didn't want to write it at all. God said, okay, you have to put it. But why now? Rabbi Chaim Vital, the great student of the Ari Kadosh, he writes that there are different methods that a person is able to use in order to minimize or destroy the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is an angel. Just like we have Malach Raphael, and Malach Michael, and Malach Gabriel. The Yetzer Hara, his name, I don't want to say it, it's Samech Mem El. Sam, and then Aleph Lamed with the suffix. We don't say the name, but that's the Shem of the Yetzer Hara. Says Rabbi Chaim Vital, the way you were able to control and overpower the Yetzer Hara, Samech Mem Aleph Lamed, is through the Midah of Anava. Humility is the neutralizer of the Satan. And he says, don't take it for granted, the numerical value of Samech Mem Aleph Lamed is how much? 131. Samech Mem is 100, Aleph Lamed is 31. And the numerical value of the word Anava, humility, is also 131. So he says, Zeh le'umad zeh. Person has the Satan after him, Anava. If the Yetzer Hara is made out of fire, the Anava is water, it puts it out. And then he goes on to say, if you open up your Tehillim books, there's one chapter where David HaMelech talks about the importance of being low-key, not being boastful, not being haughty, not being arrogant. The Mizmor reads like this, Mizmor le David, Hashem lo gaba libi velo ramu enai velo halachti bigdolot ubeniflaot memeni. David HaMelech says, lo gaba libi, I was the king of Israel, but my heart stayed low, my heart was not raised. Velo ramu enai, David said, I didn't walk with my eyes up. Velo halachti bigdolot, I didn't go with gidolot, with gadlut, with arrogance. And the whole chapter is dedicated to the importance of being humble. Guess what chapter that is in the Tehillim? Kuf Lamed Aleph. So Chaim Vital says, chapter 131. He says, because Anava is Begematria 131, and the Samech Mem is 131, so therefore, Lo Nechanam, when David HaMelech was writing the chapters, he put it in that chapter over there, because that's what neutralizes. And the Mefarshim all struggled to understand what Rabbi Chaim Vital meant. How does Anava neutralize the Yetzer Hara? So I'm a humble person. So the guy can be a humble Rasha. How does the Yetzer Hara get diffused by a person that has a humble temperament, a humble attitude? So I saw an explanation like this. The Gemara writes, the Gemara says like this, Sofer Rasha la Tzaddik, umbakesh lahamito. The Rasha tries to kill the Tzaddik, the Rasha is the Yetzer Hara. Ve'ilmaleh HaKadosh Baruch Hu ozro, Lo yachol lo. If a Kadosh Baruch Hu would not help a person, we would not be able to beat the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is so strong and the temptation is so strong that without divine assistance, there's no way we'd be able to conquer it. So anybody that's interested in overcoming his passion, his Yetzer Hara, his desires, his inclinations, the only way you can do it is you have to pray that you should have divine assistance. To do it alone, it's impossible. You need a power that's larger than you to intervene to help you. Once you have a Kadosh Baruch Hu helping you, you have a chance to beat him. But to go in it alone, it's impossible. Good. So I need Hashem with me. Only one problem. The Gemara in Sotah says, God says, I cannot stay in the proximity of an arrogant person. God says, En ani vehu yicholim ladur be'olam echad. Me and the arrogant person cannot live in the same world. And God isn't going anywhere. And therefore, Ga'ava is a repellent. Shekhinah cannot stay with this Ga'ava. So therefore, if there's no Shekhinah, you're all alone. You're all alone, you can't fight the Yetzer Hara. Understand the calculation? With his anava, God says, with his humility, that's why I rest. Because I rest in the low places. When I gave the Torah, I chose Sinai, because it's a low mountain. I could have chose Mount Hermon, I could have chose Mount Tabor. There are other majestic mountains in the region. I'm not interested in that. I like the low key, I like the inconspicuous. So I went to Sinai, I went to Har Sinai. Similarly, God says, I don't like the big people. I like to rest by the small people, by the people that are low. Oh, but a person has ga'ava, God says, smells, you can't go near him. Oh, how's he going to beat his Yetzer Hara? He has no choice. He can't fight, because God's not helping him. There was one time a story of a rabbi. He came to town, and he needed to stay by someone. He needed a host. So the committee of the synagogue said, listen, Rabbi, there's one or two people you could stay by. The first guy, Mamash, the kashrut is unbelievable. Shahitat Bet Yosef, Mehadrin min Mehadrin, Gem'a Yashan, and Halav Yisrael, and bug-free water, and all the Hidurim. Only problem is, the guy himself is a little ga'ava, a little arrogant guy. So you have to tolerate his attitude. But other than that, dishes are dipped and all that other stuff. There's another guy in town. He's not the biggest mahmir, he's not taref, but he's regular balabayit, simple guy. I don't know, he's not such a big tamir hakam as well. He's kovei atim Torah, maybe he reads Chok Nisrael a little. I don't even know if he has a sifriya in his house, a library. But very nice guy, humble guy. So the rabbi says, okay, I'll stay by the second guy. The second guy? The guy was shocked with the second guy. I told you the first guy's all the ma'alot. He says, the only problem is, I can't stay by the first guy. Why? He says, because he's a ga'ava. And if God says he can't live in the same world, I should live in the same house. The humble guy, God says he lives with him, so I can live with him. I have to follow Kadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore, once there's ga'ava, Shekhinah leaves the person. Shekhinah leaves the person now in the boxing ring. It's samich mem against the guy. So the guy's like, hey, where's Shekhinah? Shekhinah, I'm not with you, I'm with you. Adonai malach ge'ut lavesh. God wears ga'ava, because God is able to be a ge'eh. Anybody that wears the suit of ga'ava is wearing God's clothes. And therefore God repels him. I found a fantastic Darkei Moshe. Darkei Moshe is Moshe Isserlish. He writes his comments on the Bet Yosef, and then he writes his comments in the Ramah in the Shulchan Aruch. He's quoting over here in Yoreh De'ah Siman Lamidhe Ot Aleph a quote from the Sefer Hasidim. Listen what Sefer Hasidim says. The Sefer Hasidim is in Katlag. Echad haya yodea le'ayen bebehema behaya imi keshera o terefa. There was a certain fellow, he was able to do a certain test when the animal is still alive to see if the animal is kasher or tarif. Normally, you can't do that till you slaughter it. You have to make a bedikah, you stick your hand inside, you have to check the internal organs, you have to blow the lungs up. There's a system. That's what they're doing in the slaughterhouses. So Rabbi Yehuda Hasid writes, there was a guy, he knew how to check without even making shahita. What was the test? So he says, Velo ratzah lelamed, but he didn't want to teach it. He didn't want to give it over. Amar, Shema yismichu al zeh, velo yibdeku. He was worried that people might rely on it, and they're not going to do the checkings that they're supposed to. Upa'amim yit'eh. Ve'amru hachamim ve'el binatcha al tisha'in. Which means, it's a system, it works, but he didn't give it out because he doesn't want people to misuse it, and they might make a mistake with it. So you got to go the old-fashioned way. You got to check the animal to make sure. So I'm going to tell you what the secret was. He didn't want to say it, but I'm going to tell it to you. The Rama writes it. He says, "Sheyesh la'avir ulmashmesh hayad al gabe behema be'odah haya." You go to the animal when it's still alive, and you put your hands on the animal's head. Im tashpir la'aris tachat yado vaday keshera. If the animal puts its head down, then already you know the animal is kosher. V'im lav terefa. And if the animal keeps his head up as you're putting your hand on it, ge'eh, you know for sure it's terefa. Which means you don't have to slaughter it, right away sell it to the goyim. Don't even get involved with it. You notice over here is terefa. V'natati bo siman. He says, and I gave a siman to remember this. The pasuk says, he doesn't quote the pasuk, but the others quote the pasuk. Zivhei Elohim Ruach Nishbara, which means Zivhei Elohim, a korban that would be worthy to put on the mizbeach. Zivhei Elohim Ruach Nishbara, that has a humble spirit. He quotes the pasuk, Lev Nishbar v'nitke ad ushval ruach le'achayot. Ushval ruach le'achayot, which means if the animal is humble, puts his head down, you know it's kasher. Keeps his head up, taref. And then the Rama writes, Velo ratziti le'arich, but I don't want to go into the subject. But don't rely on it again. So he doesn't say that halakha l'maaseh, but he offers it as an idea. With this, they explain, if you remember, when Yaakov Abinu met Esav, so it says, Vayalin balayla ahu, Yaakov sleeps over the night, Vayikach min haba biyado mincha le'Esav. He sends Esav a gift. And what did he send him? Animals. Well, should I give us a whole list? He sent them 10 of these, and 20 of those, and 50 of these, and a whole bunch of cattle. And the Mefarshim all ask, how did Yaakov Avinu allow himself to send these animals to the Rasha? Why not? The holy books bring down, as we'll shortly see, in a kosher animal, there's certain nitzotzot shel kedusha. There's certain holy sparks of kedusha. When a tzaddik eats the meat, he elevates these sparks of kedusha. How is Yaakov Abinu going to take these kosher animals now and give them to his brother Esav? For sure, Esav was a rasha. He's not going to be able to make the proper tikkun. He's not going to be able to make the proper rectification. How did Yaakov Abinu give min haba biyado? So I saw the Mefarshim bring down like this. He used the test of Rabbi Yehuda Hasid. Yaakov Abinu knew it. So what did he do? The hand test. He put the hand on the animal's head. The ones that the animal put their head down, I'm keeping this one for myself, I'm not going to waste this on Esav. He only gave the animals that kept their heads up. Terefa, good. The taref deserves a terefa. Min b'mino. And that's what the pasuk means. Vayikach min haba biyado. He took from the animals that stayed in his hand. The ones that did not put their head down remained on his hand. The ones that put their head down, the hand's empty. The animal ducked. But min habavi yado, the ones that remained in his hand, good, send it to Isaac. The Gemara says, Ama'ares asur le'echol basar. And Ama'ares is forbidden to eat meat. Different interpretations have been said. Why does an Ama'ares have to, why is it asur? Today, we don't have this. In the olden days, if a person would walk into a restaurant, so he would ask, what's the kashrut? And there was what's your kashrut? They would ask him a question. What Gemara are you learning? I don't learn Gemara. Get out of the store. Go have pizza. But I want to have a steak. You're Ama'ares. Ama'ares asur le'echol basar. Today they don't do that. Today they don't let anybody into the restaurants. But the Maharsha explains why is it asur for an Ama'ares to eat basar. He explains it very practical. Because to eat meat, you need to know a lot of laws. How to slaughter correctly, and how to soak it to get rid of the blood, and how to check it to see if it's kosher. There's a lot of halachot. Ama'ares really doesn't know all these halachot. They're too complex for him, and therefore he's going to slaughter incorrectly, and the food probably is not going to be kosher. It's much easier, go have fish. All you have to know is fins and scales. That's it. Ama'ares is able to fins and scales, or go have cheese. That's it. Or milk a cow. You don't have to know too many things. But basar is too halachically complicated. Ama'aretz asur le'echol basar. But there's another interpretation. Because that he brings down that there are 4 stages in the creation. He refers to it as Datzham. Datzham is domain someya, hay medaber. Domain is inanimate object. That's the lowest level. That's like the earth. There's Kedusha in the earth. The holy earth. But it's on a low level. The earth elevates itself via the tzomeach, the plant. When the plant is planted in the ground, so now the nitzotzot of the earth go into the plant. So the plant is more kadosh, because it has now its own nitzotzot shel Kedusha, plus what it takes from the earth. So far so good? Comes the animal and eats the plant. Now the animal has in him the earth, the plant, and itself. A lot of nitzotzot shel Kedusha in the animal. But those nitzotzot don't do the animal any good. What is the animal going to do with these nitzotzot shel Kedusha? Become a Rosh Hashiva? He's not going to become. So therefore, you need to bring it to its ultimate tikkun. And that is what? That a shohet should come and slaughter it, and the food should be served to a tzaddik, and the tzaddik eats it. Now all those nitzotzot from the earth to the plant to the animal is now ingested inside the tzaddik, and he uses that power of Kedusha that he got from the animal in order to go study Torah, and to go do mitzvot. So he synthesizes the nitzotzot into his system, and now he uses it in order to serve a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Hence, the way we look at eating meat, for example, is a ceremony. Now you start to understand the whole concept of eating korbanot. It was a serious thing. They understood that they're ingesting Kedusha. Just as a side point, this debunks the theory of all these animal right wackos that come along and say the poor animal. It's not right. And what if animals would come along and slaughter human beings? What would we say then? All these distorted rationale. To these activists we say, why are you having cruelty to the animal? Why do you want the animal to remain an animal? I want the cow to become a human being. When I eat the cow, now he's part of me. Now I turned a behemah into an Adam. The way you want it, you want the cow to remain a cow for the rest of his life. Yesterday, this cow over here, if he dies a cow. But now that I ate a rib steak, now I turned that cow into a Jew. Now already after death, that cow has olam haba. So therefore, we elevate. The Kaf HaChaim brings that in the Chot Shechita. If you could hear the animal speak, when the Shechet comes in, he says, please slaughter me kasher, please slaughter me kasher. That's his wish, that's his yearning. These people don't speak the language of cows. They might think like cows, but they don't speak the language of the cows. If they would hear the language of the cows, they would say, slaughter them. In any event, that's why an Amaharis cannot eat meat. Because all these nitzotzot of Kedusha, he doesn't know what to do with them. He's going to eat it, and what is going to end up doing? Averot. And therefore, on the contrary, instead of a tikkun, it's a kilkul. Instead of taking the whole world and bringing it to a perfection, you took the world and you brought it out to a destruction. Therefore, we tell the Amaharis, don't get involved with eating meat. You're going to spoil. You're going to waste all that kedusha on things that are not proper. Now the nitzotzot are going to end up going to the dark side, to the kilipot. And now you made more problems for Klal Yisrael. So please, Amaharis, be a vegetarian. The Kedushat Levi brings down, the Rebbe Yitzhak Neberdichev, that just like we make a tikkun on a kosher animal by eating it, the tikkun on a taref animal is not to eat it. That's how you make the tikkun on that animal. It also has nitzotzot. The ground, the plant itself. So how do I elevate it? So when they bring the meat, they say, oh, sorry, this is terefa. Oh, terefa, I cannot eat it. Oh, now already you fixed it through your abstention. Somebody asked, Rabbi Yehuda Hasid, you gave us a good trick. How come we can't use it today? I want to do the trick of Rabbi Yehuda Hasid. Let the animal come in front of me. I'll put my hand on it. It bows down. Kasher. Keeps its head up. Tarif. Why can't we use this today? So you know what the rabbis answered? It only works if the person's a perfect tzaddik. Because then the animal will give a proper reading. The animal sees the tzaddik coming and put the hand on its head. So if it's, oh, this guy obeys a tzaddik, I want him to eat me. It'll elevate my nitzotzot. So it bows its head. And if it's taref, the animal also does not want to be eaten. And therefore it'll keep its head up. But if people that are not holding by the spiritual level, an Amaharis is going to go do this, what's going to happen? The animal is not going to give a proper reading. It's going to always put its head down because it doesn't want the Amaharis to eat him. He doesn't want to remain unfixed. So therefore, to give this heter to every single guy, you're not going to get the right readings on it. Therefore, they said, you know what? Better not to publicize it. Oh, so now we go back to the beginning pasuk that we started with. The pasuk says, Daber el bnei Yisrael v'amarta alehem. Speak to the people. Adam ki yakriv mikem korban. You want to get close to Kadosh Baruch Hu? Ki yakriv. You want to get close to Kadosh Baruch Hu? Min behema. Learn from the behema. You know what to learn from the behema? That a kosher animal puts its head down. Learn humility. Learn anava. Adam ki yakriv mikem korban min behema. That's how you get close to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Lev nishbar v'nitkeh. And if you look throughout Hazal, there's so many episodes of the Hachamim how they used humility. The Gemara in Chulin Daf Nun Tet tells a story of a fellow called Bartuvia. He came to the Beit Din of Rav with an animal. He wanted to know if it was kasher or not. He wants to eat it. Rav, Shiva, Rav, Gadol Hador. He looked at the animal, he checked it, he said, kasher. Shemuel, his colleague, was there in the Midrash. Shemuel says, But Rabbi, maybe it got bitten by a poisonous snake. From where would you suspect that an animal got bitten by a poisonous snake? So Rav says, how would we know that? So Shmuel says, well, if we burn it, we'll see how the flesh burns, we can tell. That's okay, let's just try it out. The guy says, can I eat it? Wait. Shmuel wants to make one more test. Sure enough, they test it out, and they find out that really the animal indeed was bitten by a poisonous snake, and therefore had poison in him, and if the guy would have eaten it, he would have died. So, Shmuel saved the day. It was a stroke of prophecy. Guess what Shmuel, how his response was to his prediction. Okay, let's ask a simple question. What would my response be to that prediction after we find out that he was right? The normal response would be, you see, I told you so. I'm not saying anything. I mean, was I right? Did I call it? Did I make this prediction? You like that? And you say, yes, and he has a right to boast a little. I mean, that's you know. Instead, as a knee-jerk reaction, and this is what excites me, not that what he said, but how quick he said it. Right away he says, Lo ye'uneh letzaddik kol aven. Oh, Rav, you're such a tzaddik, God did not want to bring a stumbling block through you. Oh, look how much God loves you. He took all the credit and he put it to Rav. He says, not my zichut. Min hashamayim that I was here, min hashamayim that I saw it. But you know what? It's because you were here, Rav. Because God doesn't want to bring a stumbling block through the tzaddik. Oh, what a tzaddik you are. Rav, again, let's go back. The gadlut of Shmuel is, number one, the deflection, not interested in the kavod, the humility, and more importantly, how fast he was able to do that. That means it was instinctive. Better is Rav's response. Again, if you're Rav, okay, you just got complimented. Lo ye'oneh letzaddik kol aven. Baruch Hashem. Tzaddikim. Rav doesn't digest the compliment. Rav deflects it and says, oh, Shmuel, kol raz lo anisle. Look at this. Every secret he knows, even things that are impossible for anybody to know, he has X-ray vision. How did you know this animal had poison in it? Well, this is the Gedolim. Each one is throwing the kavod to somebody else. Compare that to Bil'am al-Rasha. Bil'am tells Balak, go build Mizbehot. I need to have 7 altars. I never built an altar, but it cannot be an easy thing. You got to put stones and bricks, and you have to build it. It's a situation. And Balak goes painstakingly and builds 7 Mizbehot. After he builds the 7 Mizbehot, and he brings sacrifices on the Mizbehot, Bil'am comes along and says, it's Shiv'ah Mizbehot arachti va'al. I built the Mizbehot and I sacrificed. He did nothing. You want to take the credit, which is the greatness about tzaddikim, is even when they did something, they didn't take credit. The Risha'im, on what they didn't do, they also want to take credit. It's a lie. Ga'ava. There was once a priest, Kumar, and he lived in the town and he was known to be a very, very big, humble man. Overly humble. The rabbi of the town wanted to go see him. Is it true, such a humble man? So he went to visit him. He knocked on his door. The Kumar comes to the door like this with his head down. Mehila. So he tells the rabbi, please come in. I'm not worthy that you come to visit me. Ma'ani, mahayai. I'm nothing, I'm dirt. The rabbi said, I know you're dirt, but I still came anyway to see you. Please sit down. The rabbi says, I came to ask you a question. You came to ask me a question. In the chokhmah, in the bina, in the... I know. One question I want to ask you. You read the Old Testament? He says, of course. He says, in the Old Testament it says, Ba'ish Moshe Anav Mikol Adam. Moses was the most humble man that ever lived. He says, so what's your question? He says, you're even more humble than Moses. How could it be? How could it be if the Bible says Moses the most humble man, you're even more humble than Moshe Rabbeinu? And the Kumar goes like this and says, the truth of the matter is, this question has been bothering me for many years as well. Which means, you cannot fake humility. Humility is something that has to be genuine. It's not enough just to talk like an anav. Rav Yonatan Eibeshitz once explained on the pasuk Va'ish Moshe Anav Mikol HaAdam, and Moshe Rabbeinu was more humble than all of the people. Mikol HaAdam. Why can't it just say Va'ish Moshe Anav? What does it mean Mikol HaAdam? From all of the people. This is one time, it was Erev Kippur, and Rav Yonatan Eibeshitz got stuck in a certain village. He wasn't intending to be there for Kippur, but he got stuck there. So he had to pray in the synagogue over there, and it was a big zechut for the people to have Rav Yonatan Eibeshitz there. Well, they didn't expect it. The tzaddik is praying with them. What happens? He happens to be praying next to an old man. And he's watching how the old man prays, wow, with such fervor and such concentration. Hatati, Aviti, Pashati, he's crying, Mani, Mahayay, Anuki Afar Ma'efer, Rimavet Ole'a, Busha Ve'irpa. Wow, what an inspiration. Never saw a man pouring his heart out, praying like this. I'm nothing, I'm a zero, I'm worthless. And he means it, he's praying like this. After the Viduim are over, now they're going to give the aliyot to the Torah. So they give this guy Kohen, one Levi, this one Yosef. Finally they come to the old man, and they tell him, Bechavod, they give him one of the extra aliyot. So he comes along and says, you give me an extra? Who do you think I am over here? He says, that guy who's not half what I am, you gave him the good aliyah, and Rav Yonatan Eibeshitz can't believe this is the guy that says, I'm nothing, I'm a zero. And then all of a sudden the guy turned into Ge'eh Musrah, the guy's demanding kavod, aliyot. So after the prayers were over, Kippur was over, Rav Yonatan Eibeshitz went and says, Mechila, I gotta ask you a question here. I'm seeing over here a dichotomy. The paradox. You're crying, and all of a sudden you're claiming you want aliyah, you know who I am. He says, Rabbi, it's very simple. When I'm praying to Kadosh Baruch Hu and making the viduyim, so I'm comparing myself at that moment to God. Compared to God, I'm nothing. But to those guys? These guys are not those guys over here. I'm much better than them. The greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu, Va'ish Moshe Anav Mikol Adam. Of course, Moshe Rabbeinu, was very easy for him to be humble when it came to HaKadosh, because he was close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're all nothing. Just like when we go sit in front of the Gadol Ador. We sit in front of the great rabbi of the generation, no matter how much you know, I know nothing. Kal v'chomer, when you're in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu was his humility was not only ben Adam lemakom, Va'ish Moshe Anav Mikol Adam. Even in front of the people, Moshe Rabbeinu was humble. He didn't pull rank. He didn't say, oh, to these people, how much by that? Even in front of the people, Moshe's humility was in check. And he says, regarding himself, V'nachnu ma, which literally means, what are we? The word ma, the numerical value is 45, which is the same numerical value as Adam. Adam is 45. What Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, you know what Adam is? Adam is ma. Ma means nothing. He's insignificant. It's worthless. And where did he learn this midah from? From HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rav Hida writes As great as a Kadosh Baruch Hu is, that's how humble he is. And the greater he is, the more humble he is. He proves it numerically. Watch this. Yudke Vavke. How much is it equal? 26. Follow what I'm going to tell you. 2 and 6 is how much? 8. Okay, 2 Yudke Vavkes is how much? 52. You have two Yudke Vavkes. 5 and 2 is how much? 7. Oh, we doubled Yudke Vavke and it went down. What's 3 Yudke Vavkes? 78. 7 and 8? 15. 1 5 is 6. You quadruple it, it's 104. 1 and 4 is 5. You're going down. The next start, 130. 130, 130 is 4. The next one is 156. 156 is 1, 5, and 6 is 12. 1 and 2 is 3. 182. 1, 8, and 2 is how much? 11. 11, 1, 1 is 2. And then 208. 208 is 10. 2 and 8. 10 is 1. So therefore, במקום שאתה מוצא גדלותו של הקדוש ברוך הוא, שם אתה מוצא ענוותנותו. The greater הקדוש ברוך הוא is, that's the more humble. And that's the same thing with Moshe Rabbeinu. Our rabbis tell us that if a person looks at wine, the good wine has sediments. The sediments give the flavor to the wine. That's where the ta'am comes from. But the sediments are only valued when they're on the bottom. However, once the sediments start to float to the top, then the entire wine becomes undrinkable. The sediments represent anava. When a person has greatness, but he lowers himself, then already the greatness has value. But when the sediments start to rise up, that already spoils the entire character. There was one great rabbi. He was the chief rabbi of Frankfurt. They called him Rabbi Abraham Avush. He was a big Talmid Chacham, Gaon. I love this story. He went to collect for the yeshiva in a town that not everybody knew him. He walks into a hotel, there's some wealthy men eating. So he goes up to one of them in the middle of their dinner, collecting for the yeshiva. Not knowing the stature of the man, the guy starts screaming at him. You kapsan, you collector, you good for nothing, you parasite. Don't you see we're in the middle of eating? Wow, Abraham's shocked. The guy is letting him have it. Alright, he said, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. And he walks away. All of a sudden, there's a guy sitting. He looks, and he sees he doesn't have his watch. He said, I don't believe it. This is Ganav over here. He stole my watch. He's a clip man. He came over here and make believe like he's collecting tzedakah. He stole my watch. He runs after him. He says, you come over here, you collector, you swindler. You stole my watch. He says, I stole your watch. I didn't steal your watch. Ganav what you are. And he starts to beat him. He starts to hit him, giving him makot after makot. I promise I didn't take your watch. I didn't take anything. But to no avail. He ran for his life. That Shabbat happened to be Shabbat Teshuvah. They invited Rabbi Abraham Avush to give the derasha for Shabbat Teshuvah. All the people of the town came to the big synagogue. Oh, they're all going to hear now the derasha of the great Hacham. Who comes to the derasha? This rich man. He sits down, okay, he never heard of Rabbi Abraham Avush. Who's this rabbi speaking to? Rabbi Abraham Avush. Okay, let's see who comes out of the stage. All of a sudden, he comes out, he says, Shema Yisrael. What's Shema Yisrael? He says, that's the guy that came into the hotel, I beat him up, I cursed him, I chased him. He gave one of the most spectacular derashot ever. The people were spellbound. After the derasha, everybody's coming up to him. Hasaku Baruch, Yishar Kuhacha, what a derasha, Pema Pik Margaliot. Unbelievable. Hundreds and hundreds of people all complimenting him. Ashrecha, you're an inspiration. This guy's saying, oh, I'm finished. How could I go into Kippur after what I did to this rabbi? His friend tells him, listen, these rabbis over here, they're humble people. Go up to him. Tell him you're sorry. Tell him it was a misunderstanding. They're not going to hold a grudge, especially before Kippur. They're not going to hold it against you. You think so? Yeah. So he gets online. Everybody's shaking his hand. Everybody's shaking his hand. All of a sudden, Rabbi Abraham Avush sees this guy now coming towards him. Now, the way I always tell the story is, I pause the story over here. And I ask that you should anticipate the ending of the story. There's a few options. The way I would end the story, Rabbi Abraham sees the guy coming towards him, and he goes like this with his hands, as if to say, now you know. And that's a good ending, because he's not going to rub it in his face. He doesn't have to say anything. Okay? Thank you. Now take a walk. Don't worry about it, buddy. Take a walk. I won't see you again. And that would be a good reaction. If you want to say that Rabbi Abraham was a tzaddik, yesod olam and all that, he might say, you know what, don't worry about it. It's okay, it happens. How are you supposed to know who I was anyway? You know, there's a lot of these fakers that come and collect. You can't tell who the real guys are or not. Don't worry about it. You know what? Rabbi, you did me a favor. It's kaparat avonot. Before Kippur. Give him a nice word. Pinch his cheek a little. Tell him, don't worry about it. That's good also. But that's not the ending of the story. Another option, which is, we know is not an option, he could tell him, man, you were a Rasha. And he no mohen. I don't forgive you. You have to bring me 10 people, and you have to go to my grave in 120 years, and you have to make it. You have to build me a yeshiva now if you want tikkun. You can blackmail him. Today, that's for sure what would happen today. Again, A, B, C. The answer is D, none of the above. And you cannot predict the story, and if it was happening to us, unless you were truly a humble man, you would not be even fake it. As the guy's coming to him, picture the scene, hundreds of people, Hasak Baruch, giving him kavod, he just made a brilliant derasha, and he sees the guy coming to him, and all of a sudden he turns red in the face, he says, please, I promise you I didn't steal your watch, Rabbotai, I didn't take it, he doesn't believe me, I didn't take it, Lo tiknov isud deoraita, I didn't take. Wow. You still think, after all that, he's coming to ask for his watch? But it didn't even enter his mind. He didn't even get influenced. He didn't get tainted. That he could still get all this kavod, and he still thinks the guy is complaining that he stole his. That's the true humility that we're talking about. And that's the humility that the Chaim Vital said, that anava, the Samech Mem dissipates of such anava. And it dissipates because the Shekhinah is able to come close to a person. And once the Shekhinah comes close to a person, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ozro. And this is really a nice introduction when we're entering Pesach. It's Chodesh Nisan. The bread of Pesach is matzah. Our rabbis tell us the difference between Hametz and Matzah is Hametz represents Ga'ava. Hametz rises. It's puffy. Whereas the Matzah is very, very flat. The Matzah is very, very, very simple. Even its ingredients, flour and water, where bread has other additives and things like that. We have a custom. On Erev Pesach, we burn the Hametz. And the Ben Ish Chai has a prayer at the time of the burning of the Hametz, and the prayer goes something to the effect, Ribono Shel Olam, just like I had the zechut to burn the Hametz, the physical Hametz, give me the ability to burn the Hametz that's inside of me. The Se'or Sheba'isa, that yeast that's inside of me that causes me to become bloated, which means the burning of the Hametz reminds us to burn the internal Hametz, and that's to burn the Ga'ava, to burn that ego, to burn that arrogance, to burn that self-inflation. And that's what the first page of Masechet Pesachim says, Or le'arba asar. Bodkim et hametz le'or haner. Bodkim et hametz. There was one rabbi making bedikat hametz, and he went behurim u'bestakim. He went into every nook and every cranny, and he checked everywhere. And they told Rabbi, you didn't leave a place unchecked. You checked the whole house up and down. You fulfilled the halakha, madrin and a madrin. He said, no, there's still one place that I didn't check, and I didn't get rid of the hametz. And he rips open his shirt. He starts banging on himself. This hametz that's inside of me. He says, this hametz I did not get rid of yet. And that's the attitude when it comes to the holiday of Pesach. We mustn't only eat the matzah. We must learn from the matzah. The matzah is a musar to us. When we come to the holiday of Pesach, hametz is asur afilu b'mashim. Ga'ava is asur afilu, even a drop of it is no good. This is a great avodah. We started a few years ago a project. We're learning Mesilat Yesharim. Mesilat Yesharim is the path of the just, written by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lutzato. It's a handbook. He says in the beginning of the book, if you follow my book, by the end of the book you'll be able to resurrect the dead. We're almost there. Without the Shem, anybody needs any services? We're almost finished the book. He says this, he says. But I don't think he meant if you read the book. He meant you have to live by the standards of the book. It's unbelievable. He gives you level after level after level after level after level. We're already at the level of Hasidut. Already, I was out of the game already in the introduction. And you think, what more can he say in the introduction? In the introduction, he covered the highest level. And after he finishes, he said, this is the only introduction now. And the introduction already, you're on Pluto. Then he talks about Zehirut, and Zirizut, and then Nikiyuh, all the way to the Madrigot. We're in Hasidut now. Hasidut. Forget about it. Different level. But towards the end of the book, he says the prerequisite to all this is what? Anava. He has a whole chapter on humility, which means Hasidut, Sitkut. Without Anava, you don't get there. Because as long as there's Ga'ava, the Samech Mem is right there with you. Samech Mem's there, and then you have obstacles, and we're unable to overcome them. And this is our Musar over here. Not confusing, very simple. How do we work on the Anava? I'll give you one quick way, and then I have to let you go. Somebody asked, give me a fireproof, shore-proof way to control Ga'ava. Wait. You know how we control it? The way we control it is, whatever we have, whatever success we have, whatever talent we have, whatever ability we have, whatever blessing we have, can be taken away at any moment. When a person knows that his life is so fragile, and at any given moment it can turn around upside down, he has no ga'ava. I was once watching somebody give a shi'ur. In the middle of the shi'ur, as he was talking, he started to slur his words. And we're listening, what is he talking about, this guy? What happened to him? And all of a sudden, he stopped talking, and 2 minutes later he was in an ambulance. In front of us. And this was a hacham of great, great stature. And in a matter of seconds, we said, we'll take it away from him. And you just look at it and you say, my gosh, look how fragile life is. Can we have gava? Can a person come along and say, look how smart I am? What else is smart? 2 seconds. Look how rich I am. Do we have to give it ayot? People in our generation, in our time, that went to sleep rich, woke up poor. So can a person be on his wealth? Certainly not. And anything that we have, any success, as long as you keep it in the front of your mind, it's temporary, and it's not in stone, and it can change. Therefore, you be grateful and you be humble. Thank you, Hakadosh Baruch Hu. I appreciate it. Thank you. I don't deserve it. Ma'ani mahayai. Iratzon. Hakadosh Baruch Hu should give us the ability to learn from the matzah. Matzah zu she'anachnu ochlim. That when we eat the matzah, it should affect us that we should become like the matzah all year round. And then Be'azat Hashem will be fulfilled on us the beginning of the pasuk that we said, Adam ki yakriv mikem korban Hashem. We're going to come close to Hakadosh Baruch Hu. And you know where we're going to learn it from? Min ha-behemah. Just like the behemah that's kosher puts its head down. Lev nishbar v'nitkeh zevchei Elohim ruach nishbara. Learn from the animal has anava. And that's the way we come close to Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen.